panel. I'm Mina Harris. I'm the founder of the Phenomenal Campaign. This is my first time at the Chase Center, and it's extraordinary, and I'm so excited to be here. So as you all know, this is the annual LGBTQ night, and I'm really excited to get into the conversation. I have a really quick travel advisory for everyone here that both the Golden Gate Ferry to Larkspur and the SF Bay Ferry to Oakland and Alameda will leave at 10:30 p.m., so don't miss your ferry, or figure out another way how to get home. Or take an Uber. All right, so let me introduce our panelists really quickly. David Kelly, right here to my left. Yay, David Kelly is the Chief Legal Officer at the Warriors. He's also a founding member of the team's Diversity Inclusion Council. We have Monica Boll, a Managing Director at Accenture and global sponsor of the company's Pride Network, who has met with senior Vatican officials to discuss LGBTQ discrimination, and was named a 2018 LGBTQ role model by Outstanding. Thank you for being here, Monica. Rick Welts, I'm gonna jump over to you. A Naismith Hall of Famer. And of course, the Warriors President and Chief Operating Officer. His career has included a 17-year stint at the NBA League office, and most recently, he oversaw the orchestration of this beautiful building we're in tonight. Can we get another round of applause for this amazing, beautiful Chase Center? And we have the illustrious Sue Bird. Sue, as I'm sure you all know, is one of the most decorated women's basketball players of all time. And I'm just going to run through this. A 4-time Olympic gold medalist, a 4-time FIBA gold medalist with USA Basketball, a 3-time WNBA champion with the Seattle Storm, an 11-time WNBA All-Star, and the league's... I'm not done. All-time leaders in assists and 2 NCAA titles at UConn. You're amazing. We're so excited to welcome you to the Bay Area. And finally, Megan Rapinoe. A 2-time FIFA World Cup champion with U.S. Women's Soccer, who was recently honored as the FIFA Women's Player of the Year, named to the Best 11 at the FIFA World 11 Awards. As you all know, during the 2019 World Cup, Megan took home the Golden Ball and the Golden Boot Awards for Best Player and Top Goal Scorer. And she was recently named a 2019 Glamour Magazine Women of the Year. And Rick Welts, sitting here, has said that you could argue that Megan is one of the most influential athletes in the world. I think we all agree with that, right? All right, what a great crowd we have. So as I opened with, this is LGBTQ night, and so we're here to talk about equality, inclusion, and allyship. And you know, Megan, I want to start with you and really just acknowledge what an incredible time it has been, and to watch you from the summer until now. And I'd love to just hear you talk about what that's been like, and especially how you managed, you know, being a world-class athlete while also being front and center and in the spotlight around issues of equality, and how you've managed that.
Oh, good question. Yeah. Like, I hope I'm managing it okay. It's been wild. That's the only way I know how to describe it. It's been very busy, so incredible. I feel like I'm just trying to take it in, soak it in, really enjoy the moment. I know there probably won't be another moment like this in my life, so just really embracing it, embracing the tired and the excitement and sort of everything that comes with it. And just realizing too, and like sometimes having to take a step back and, you know, being a part of this team, I feel like we're seeing the world change around us, like, you know, and not only at the World Cup and on the playing field, but much far beyond. So just really appreciating the platform that I have, trying to take advantage of it, and leverage it, to use it for good in the best way that I know how, which usually involves me blabbing about something.
We love it. Please keep doing more of that. Sue, I mean, you two have had such an illustrious career. You're not new to the spotlight, but have been thrust sort of also into this global spotlight since this summer. And one thing that you said that I love is that as a female athlete, you represent more than being an athlete and playing a sport. And you've been able to, as Megan just said, use that for changing the world. And I'd love to hear you talk about that feeling of responsibility, right? And being more than an athlete and using your platform to change the world, which we're all watching you do right now.
Yeah, I think about when I first got drafted, which was 2002, and what a different time it was then. And looking back, I knew I was a role model. I was saying this earlier. I knew I was a role model because I knew when people asked me, like, oh, what women's basketball player did you model your game after? I didn't really have an answer because I didn't really watch them because they weren't on TV, they weren't around. So very quickly, I knew I was a role model. But looking back now, obviously watching what Megan's done, I now realize I didn't say a word back then. I knew it, I was thinking it, but as my career went, I didn't really speak up in those moments because it wasn't really what female athletes did in the time. And now we have such a huge, there's momentum, it's a moment, and I don't want to miss out again. That's really how I feel about it. So to be more than an athlete is, for me, not missing out on another moment to inspire or to change those that, because listen, I ain't going to play forever. So there's going to be some youngins.
You might.
There's going to be some younger athletes that can benefit. So that's kind of how I see it.
Awesome. So Rick, speaking of seizing the moment, you did something very courageous, which is that you came out very publicly in 2011, which was quite a long time ago now, and you did it in a very bold way through a front page article in the New York Times. And yes, thank you for that. That's amazing. To turn, more to some of the issues that we're still facing, especially in sports, we know that things like homophobia are hurting the league still, and there's still so much work to be done. Megan, you talk about this, that in women's sports we've come quite a long way, and there's still a lot more to do for men. So especially for male athletes, I'd love to hear you talk about what we as a community need to do, and more directly, what can we do to make men feel safe to come out in the bold way that you did?
Well, we talk about allies, right? Well, first of all, I have to say, did you read Ann Killian's column a day ago? I am sitting next to what she described as the #1 power couple in sports. How about that?
Little do they know how boring we are.
How about that? Well, my own journey depended on allies, right? My own journey, when I made the decision that I really wanted to take the step of, bringing my sexual orientation into my workplace, I went to one of my allies, a brilliant PR person who ran an agency in New York, and said, here's what I'm thinking about doing. Is there something more that could be gained if I did it in a certain way? And he just looked at me and still calls me Ricky. Ricky! Like, if you want to do this, I'm going to help you, which was the most important thing. And I think it's page A1 in the New York Times, which is what I describe as my oh shit moment. Can I say that here? But then I relied, who was I? Rick Welts. No one had ever heard of Rick Welts before. So, how would my story resonate? And it was through other people who supported me in my career. Well, they didn't know who I was. They knew who the 2-time MVP Steve Nash was. They knew who the 13-time NBA champion Bill Russell was. They knew who the 40-year commissioner of the NBA David Stern was. And those were my friends. Those were the people who had guided me through my career. So it was through my asking them to tell my story that I think we reached the audience that we did, because everybody knew them and everybody respected them, and they could tell other people who I was and what I meant to them in a way that I think I was incredibly fortunate, and it really resonated. So It's not okay to use the wrong words. It's not okay in your workplace to condone other people's behavior in a way that you know is wrong. And you just need to be yourself and stand up and call people out when that happens and talk about what you care about, right?
Absolutely. David, turning to you, you are on the Diversity and Inclusion Council, which I know is a fairly new team organization. And speaking of allyship, you as a straight, cisgendered male, how do you think about your role as an ally, and how do you think about it in the context of corporate as well?
Okay. So let's first deal with the elephant in the room. What the hell am I doing on this phenomenal panel? I know that's what everyone is thinking. I am not a member of the Hall of Fame. I'm working on my game, but have yet to win a gold medal. But I think actually that's the point. I think that being an ally, you can be anyone. I'm holding it down for the people who have not done great things in their life on this panel, I guess. And but to be an ally, it just means all of us, I think, inside of our own roles, have influence and have power. Whether it's at your job, whether it's in your family, whether it's with your circle of friends, any community that you're in, you actually have a voice and you have power and you have influence over the people who are around you. And being an ally just means being willing to use your power to create a better world. And so, in a lot of ways, I think it's that simple. And so, it's knowing how to use your voice, knowing that you need to use your voice, and then on the flip side of that, it's also knowing when to be quiet and to listen, and to not think that you have the answers that's going to solve someone else's problems, but you need to listen to someone and allow them to lead and tell you what it is that they need from you and what they need for you to do. And so I think it's using your power and using your voice and knowing when to listen before you go out and do something.
Thank you, yeah. Monica, you've been at the forefront of LGBTQ issues for a while now through your work at Accenture, and you talk about getting to equal. And I'd love for you to expand on that and also, build on what David's talking about around how ordinary people like us, we may not have, medals or be world-class athletes, but what can each of us be doing to contribute to positive change?
Yeah, so I think at Accenture, we've built a culture all about equality. So it's all about, regardless of color of skin, religious background, gender, whatever it is, equality builds strength and it builds innovation. And so I think, I try to use my voice and I encourage those that I work with. I encourage those in my community. I encourage my friends who may not be in a position like Rick or Megan or Sue to do something every single day, whether if it's in a meeting and someone is not being treated fairly, or to call out bad behavior when appropriate, or to get out and vote, or to encourage others to get out and vote. There is something we can do every single day to just, lead with a culture of equality, a behavior of equality, and just to treat each other with respect every single day.
Absolutely. I think, in addition to having leadership at the top, as Rick talked about, as having allies, it's also about, a support system, right? And having people around you that are supporting you and doing what is courageous to show up as your authentic self in your workplace or on the court. And Megan and Sue, turning back to you two, I would love to know just, who is your support system? Either when you came out or, oh, that was planned, just kidding. That was so cute. Either when either of you came out or now, right? What you're doing and taking a stand and using your voice is very courageous, but I can imagine at times it's also scary, and you're maybe standing up to some powerful people, right? Who's your support system? Who do you lean on in those moments?
It's my family always, from the very beginning, from, when I was little, that's who I turned to. I'm from a really big, crazy family. Someone is always there, solicited or unsolicited, to give their advice. They're like, oh, I was just thinking I'm always there. But through all of the good times and the bad times, you know, going through struggles, whatever it is, I feel like those are the people that know me the best. My parents are here, and my aunt is here. Yeah, it's so nice.
Stand up. I
Yeah,
want
stand
Megan
up. Give him a shout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stand up. Stand up.
There you go. Look at her. She was made for this. Yeah, I mean, always. I'm very close to my family, so that was a huge support for me. And I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm, you know, pretty comfortable in my skin. And I feel like the people who I find support from is just the community in general, the LGBT community, for me. Like, that inspires me and keeps me going. I know how important it is to speak out and how much that means, and for people to have people to look to that are like them, and that they can see them, and they can, you know, see them in certain jobs or in certain parts of community or culture or whatever it is. So I feel like that supports me in continuing to use my voice in this way.
And Sue, what about you? I mean, you've talked about how, you know, you weren't as vocal, whatever, 2 or 3 years ago, right? And there's something that I think for all of us in this moment, we're using our voices more, we're getting out there, people are engaging in ways that we've never seen before. What does that journey look like for you in terms of your sort of personal growth and your support system?
Yeah, well, yeah, like I said, I got drafted a long time ago, and it has been a journey. And I was like out to my friends, my family, but I wasn't like publicly out. And I used to argue, actually, like, what do you mean? I'm living my life. I'm not hiding anything. If we're in the, you know, at a game, I hold your hand. Like, what is the difference, you know, between that and like saying it publicly? But quickly I learned that there is a huge difference, and you can really have a positive impact. And the way I think of it is, when I was growing up, the gay kid was kind of the weird kid. You know, like, that's, listen, I'm born in 1980, do the math. Like, in college even, it'd be like, oh, they're gay. You know, and they were kind of, and it was like, whoa, I have a chance, along with this one over here, to like show people, like, you're not weird, you're not different, you're not anything, you're just you. And it's really been special to kind of embrace that. And along with Megan, I have a great family support system, but I've actually found a lot of support from my teammates, who kind of become family and become your close friends. And it's funny, because when I did come out, like I said, everyone already knew. When I did come out, they're like, oh, how'd your teammates take it? I was like, they didn't say anything. Like, they literally, I walked in the locker room, they're like, what's up? I was like, oh, just another day? Cool. So it was nice to have people, you know, it really hit home, like, oh, they are going to treat me the same.
So I feel like, you know, obviously there's a lot of issues still in sports that we have to deal with around homophobia, around race and gender, and those issues take different forms depending on if you're talking about the NBA or the WNBA or soccer, right? These are all sort of different but related issues. But I know that there's also a connection between women, especially in sports, right? And how that builds confidence. And I'd love to talk about that a little bit too, just how that perhaps contributed to your, you know, being willing to take risks, right? Your being in a competitive environment where you were encouraged at a young age to do that. I have 2 little girls, and they, I hope, play sports because they are 99.9 percentile for height, and they're gigantic. But more than that, as I just said, we know that when you acclimate, you know, young girls to risk-taking, that there are direct links between that and sort of future success. And I would love to know about just how that, you know, journey has been for you with sports, and if that contributed to your being confident and being your true self despite, you know, some of the setbacks that we still experience.
Well, what I found is that sports is this place where you're really only judged by like how you treat your teammates. Okay, you're judged by, you know, for maybe points and rebounds and things like that too. But it's really where it doesn't, but even the points and the rebounds and the assists, all this stuff you see on the court, it doesn't see sexual orientation. It doesn't see, you know, race. It doesn't see these things. If you're good, and it doesn't matter. So I feel like I grew up in this place that was always accepting because it really wasn't a thing. You know, you had to be a good teammate. You had to play hard, you know, work hard, obviously, and try to go out there and win. And after that, it didn't matter what anybody looked like. So that definitely, I think, contributed to just me being a confident person, like just in myself, like with who I am. you know, and being around other people like that. So I think sports, I mean, I could go on and on about sports and what it teaches you off the court and the lessons, but that was definitely a big one.
I think for me, I think I'll use it specifically with the national team, because that's been, you know, basically my club team or my franchise for my whole adult career. And I find on that team, like, normally if you're an elite woman in your field, you're one of very few. I say this all the time. You're either the one or you're one of very few. So you're sort of constantly either being judged or judging yourself or trying to fit in this way. But for us, like, we're 23 or 30 women. And so there's a million different ways that we can all be. So then we just actually get to be. We get to be exactly who we are. And I feel like we have this almost like a culture of confidence. We're all sort of fighting for the same thing on the field and fighting, you know, that's extending off the field a lot more in our careers now. So it's kind of like when you're looking for that feedback of, you know, are we going to file a lawsuit like 3 months before? We're all like, yes, we are. You know, like, yes, this is the right thing, or yes, this is what we're going to do. You know, are certain players taking a stand on something, and then the feedback from the team is instantly positive. I feel like for me, that's been, you know, kind of the way that I've cultivated my confidence, and I think for a lot of my teammates as well, it's like we've been very lucky to have that where, like, there's so many different options about what you can be, so then you just get to be whatever you want and be supported by all these amazing women.
So for those of us that are not in sports, you know, I think one thing that's key is that it's not just sports that can build that confidence, right? We know that it's other sort of competitive environments that allow people to take risks, that allow them to put themselves out there, as you just said, and to, you know, feel that pressure and grow from that. We do have an audience of a bunch of young people, and I think, you know, folks still go through each day and there's challenges, right? There are those moments where you question yourself. There are moments where, whether it's in school or your family or your workplace, where you still feel like you can't be yourself. And I mean, this question can be, you know, asked of all of you, but what were those moments for you, and how did you get past that, whether it was, you know, in the sports environment or in the professional environment? But those moments of self-doubt that you know, push through.
I'll start. So my parents are actually here, and so I think about something that my father was the only one. He was the first African American partner at a Big Six accounting firm. And so I think sometimes when I'm the only one of me inside of the room, I think of him. He was the only one. He was the first one inside of the room. And so you can't be afraid to be the only one of you, whatever you are, in the room. And at the same time, you can't allow you to be the only one in the room maybe 2 years later than you get into the room, right? And so that to me is guiding principle. And I also think of something that my mother was saying. If I didn't shout out my mother, you know, and only shout out my father, I have a problem. So my mother would always say, know who has the problem. And if it's not your problem, it's their problem. And if it's their problem, let them have their problem. Don't take someone else's problem and make it your problem. So.
So for me, I think, Sue, I can relate to a lot of the, you know, good things you learn from sports, because when I grew up, I wanted to be the world's best tennis player, and Billie Jean King was my idol. And so it was practice, 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 and it was just learn from every shot, every angle, just, you know, just practice until it was dark at night and you couldn't see the tennis ball anymore. And that translated to what I do for work now in a very professional environment, not in a sports environment. And it is about, you know, always striving to deliver my best or my team's best to our clients, because our clients fuel Accenture and it fuels our growth. And it's about, you know, trying new things. If you make a mistake, learn from the mistake and try again and keep innovating and keep trying and trying and trying. So it's about practice, and it's about resiliency and just giving your best every single day. And if you approach things with that attitude, and that, yeah, you're going to make mistakes from time to time, but it's okay to make mistakes because they teach you things along the way and it makes you better, that that breeds confidence.
Yeah, I can actually segue off that. Yeah, we can give it up. Mine is kind of twofold, and one was I tore my ACL my freshman year of college, and in that time it felt like, but it's actually not. Clay's gonna be fine. We're good to go. I promise. But yeah, I tore my ACL. My college career hadn't even started yet, and so there was like a lot of doubt that crept in. All my other classmates were, going on with their freshman year, and all these things were happening. And then even the next year, it was like, oh, UConn, the #1 team, but big question mark at the point guard spot. And I was like, that's me. But rightfully so, I hadn't played. So that was like my first taste of basketball being taken away and kind of this doubt creeping in. And, I learned so much in that process, and the main thing that I learned was like, shitty things happen. And it's like, life's really not about avoiding them. It's about understanding that they're going to come at you, and it's really about how you're going to deal with them. So instead of like bobbing and weaving bad things, I'm just kind of like, it's coming eventually, so I just got to be ready to deal. And when it does come, you kind of want to, acknowledge like making mistakes is okay. So it's, have like a moment, and then you want to attack it. And the other thing I learned in that process, fast forwarding the next year, my sophomore year, was the more I kind of put others in front of me, I felt like the more it actually worked out for me. So I felt as if I was like, for lack of a better term, like serving them or something, like, wanting my teammates to do well, really setting them up, making sure they were okay. I found that things like came back around. So sometimes when I have tough moments or I'm not feeling good about things, I try to just like help someone else. And usually it's a teammate on the court, but I find that it like gets me going again.
Or it's me.
Or Megan.
I think for me with doubt, I have this one story that's sticking out in my head. It was one of like my first years on the national team. And obviously you get there and like everyone's just so good. And a lot of people have been there for a long time. So you're not only new, but everyone else like knows what the hell is going on. And you're just like, oh my God, I'm so excited to be here. And I'm like, looking, down the line, and like Christine Lilly's there. She's like, yeah. I was like, I like had posters of you on my wall. Everything's fine. It's gonna be totally fine. Everything is awesome. But we were doing some fitness test or something, and I always had like stress about fitness tests, and I was never one of the fittest players, and just always like had kind of this anxiety about it. And she was amazing at it, and like it just looked so easy and effortless for her. And I think I must have said something to that fact, or I'm like, oh, I'm just like not good at this, or like it's so easy for you, or whatever. And she like shot me this hard look. I was like, oh God. And she was like, it's hard for everyone. Like it's just as hard for me as you think it is for you. And I was like, oh, everyone's going through the exact same thing. And it's really not about like what you're stressing about or what they're stressing about. It's just like go through the process, and you get to the end of the process, and whether it's a shot or you're in a big meeting or a picture, it's just like you can only do the best that you can do. And in order for you to do that, like commit to the process and do everything you can to prepare yourself for that moment. And then you get in that moment, it's like if you succeed, great. If you don't, then you're gonna continue to work, and you don't really have any regrets about it, and knowing all along that like it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. It can't just come that easy and be something that's worth it. So I never forgot that for the rest of my, I was like, oh, okay. Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, Rick, we'd like to hear from you.
That's great.
Yeah, we're not going to leave you out.
No, I love that. Every time I've grown, it's because I put myself in a situation where I wasn't comfortable, right? And it's easy to stay in our place where we know what's going to happen and we know how it's going to happen. The only time I ever felt like I really grew is when I was prepared to step into something that I really wasn't sure if I could do or not. And most of the time it works, sometimes it doesn't. You probably learn equally from both those situations, and you should put yourself in a position to feel that. I would just like to talk about a little bit about the power you have here. We talk a lot, probably all of us, about what diversity and inclusion means, and I think that you know, in business especially, there's ways to approach it. It can be a check the box. Yeah, we got one of those, we got one of those, we got one of those. And I talk all the time that it really isn't until you accept the principle that I believe to my core that if you have people in the room who come from different backgrounds, who bring different life experiences, who represent your customers differently, represent your fans differently, and when you get people like that in a room, you just make better decisions, okay? It's not the same people talking to the same people about the same things. And that's the leap that you can help people make. Make your voice heard and listen to other people's voices and respect them as well. And I'm really proud of the culture. I love the audience here. Like, my partner's here, my friends are here. Owners of the Warriors are here. Owners of the Phoenix Suns are here. Our coworkers from the NBA, I'm calling you out, Matt. I see you up there, are here. This is kind of what we're all about. This is like we're all different, and we're all here tonight to celebrate you two and to celebrate the principles of what we can do when we live our authentic selves and we bring that to school, to work, to our family every day, and the power that you have to really make a difference in the world. No better example than these two right here.
So thank you, Rick. I think that's we have only, I think, a couple minutes left, but I want to, again, leave the audience with sort of, you know, something to take home. And I love that you highlighted that the power is within each of us, right? And it's up to all of us. And I want to take a step back to sort of where we started, which is, you know, to recognize why we're here, which is for the annual LGBTQ night, and to both recognize the strides we have made around equality and inclusion, and also recognize how far we have to go. And also to realize that we are in an incredible moment in time, right? Where you have folks like Megan and Sue who are really impacting the conversation, where they're making change from the field, right? And we have all kinds of people who are engaging. So Megan and Sue, just sort of final words, like what would you tell this audience of regular folks, of young people who want to show up in the world with intention and want to make change and talk about equal pay and, you know, fight for what's right in their own spaces and their own spheres of influence? What can each of us be doing?
I think what I always say and what I truly live by is, like, because people ask me all the time, like, why do you do this, or where did this come from, or what's the motivation? And I just feel like every single person has a responsibility to make the world a better place in some way, whether that's in your family or your friends or your community, or you can, you know, go as far out as you want. And it's really important to do it in the way that you are going to be most impactful. Obviously, you know, Sue and I have, you know, we're incredibly lucky to have this platform that we do. And so for us, it's using that. It's taking the mic in those big moments. It's being willing to speak out. It's speaking truth to power. It's all of those things. Not everybody has that opportunity, but everybody has some opportunity to do something. So take that as your personal responsibility. It's up to all of us. It's going to take all of us to really affect meaningful change, and you can do it with everybody. It's just those little things, whether it's, you know, in the office, I call it collect and correct your people. I got that from my teammate, Crystal Dunn. But it's like if somebody says something wild, like tell them that they said something, collect them, correct them, make sure that you are owning, you know, your close space and then the space around you, and hopefully inspiring other people to do the same, because ultimately it's going to take everybody. And at the end of the day, it's like we all live in the world together. This is all of our world. It's all our community, and we can't get away from each other. So we might as well make it better while we're here.
I agree. There's really not much else to say. The only thing I would add is similar to what Rick said about, you know, being in the room. There's all kinds of rooms. There's rooms that we're in. It's hard for us too. Like, we're in some rooms, it's not easy to speak up, but you still have to do it. So I guess all I'm trying to say is I totally agree with everything they said, so I'm not going to repeat it. But just remember, like, if it feels hard and awkward and uncomfortable, it is for us too. There's moments where it's like, oh man, I got to do this. And it's hard. You're like, yeah, it's actually, I play women's basketball. I'm not a girl anymore. Sorry. But you got to do it. So just remember that it's not always easy.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. Can we get another round of applause for our panelists? Thank you. I have one final really important announcement that we have special Pride t-shirts that are coming out somewhere. There they are. Thank you all for coming. I feel like the echo is so loud. I feel like I'm shouting.
Started out as normal dreams.